if the United States was working well for most people, none of this would have been an issue. Wow, they sent $200 billion to Ukraine, but my entire family is dying because of fentanyl. Okay, they're out there killing a bunch of people in the Middle East, but I lost my job because GM or Ford or whoever, they moved their plants out of the United States, and now my life sucks, right? Or we have a bunch of folks coming to the United States seeking asylum, a huge majority of them seeking a better life, and more power to them. We need to clean up the process for sure. They look at that, they're like, whoa, they're getting, thousands of dollars in government assistance, but I'm on disability and I can't do anything. And I went to war in Iraq, right? So like the country is broken in a lot of different ways for those that need help the most, or for those that are in the lower rungs of society, let's say, right? And then when you look at this craziness that's happening overseas, where the United States is directly involved, it's hard to ignore. It's really hard to ignore. And so I think, and this is why I think the sentiment of we need to stop, like for me, this is my viewpoint, is like, take care of yours first. Take care of your people first. There's clearly huge gaps here. We have huge gaps in society. There's a reason why Donald Trump is as popular as he is. It's because he has connected with that pain. He has connected with the pain of those people, and even his brash, egotistical approach to politics, which I very much disagree with. You can't doubt that that's the reason, like, he is the beacon of hope for those people, for sure, right? So why is it so hard for us to unite around helping ourselves? It's because our two-party system has done an incredible job, and our media has done an incredible job of pitting us against each other and focusing on the actual problems. Like, okay, the administrative state, where you have the same people working for every single administration for the last 20, 30 years, dictating foreign policy, how often has that been covered in legacy media?
Yeah.
Why isn't that the biggest story on 60 Minutes or CNN or Fox News? Like, okay, that seems like a pretty obvious place to start. It's like, hey, it doesn't really matter who is in office. The people that set policy for our foreign stuff, they just are part of either party. So do we really have two parties? That was another point that was made on the podcast, right? It's like, man. And so that's why legacy media is dying, is because they're not having those conversations, because, they listen to two morons like you and I trying to fumble through this shit, and it's 100 times more valuable than some idiot on CNN. All respect to that person.
Well, and I don't know how, I think a lot of these people that work at, CNN and MSNBC and all these places, I think they're actually really, really intelligent people most of the time.
Sure are.
But the
and
problem,
good family people, I'm sure too.
Yeah, the problem is that they are, part of an apparatus where they have to toe the line on a number of issues, and it's issues like, not calling out the deep state. Like every now and then you'll see it. But yeah, that was one of John Mersheimer's points, or no, actually, I think it was Jeffrey Sachs who was saying that Helen, I can't remember what her name was, but it's someone who works.
Keller.
Helen Keller, her foreign policy. No, it was someone who was, she was a major part of the administration of both Obama and of George Bush, and that these were, people that were really responsible for a lot of the foreign policy where we did, start conflicts all around the world. And whether it's the void of coverage of that topic, I think that gets enforced very rigidly on a number of fronts, but then, all kinds of other topics where you just know, like, it's just a cultural thing. You can't say like the Overton window is closed and you can't really talk about that thing over there, or, like how crazy it is that we're pushing these permanent, like, regardless of how compassionate that you want to be towards people with gender dysphoria, which is awful, like we still probably shouldn't be letting 12-year-olds make permanent decisions about their bodies at that age, and have these surgeries or a bunch of the stuff. Like, that's kind of crazy. And I think a lot of people that work in these large institutions, they believe that it's crazy, and they still know that they can't say anything because there will be consequences. And you do, like, when people do say something, you do see consequences oftentimes. And so, I think these institutions like the media are very much part of the influence of the system that protects these interests. And you can also see that just by, Americans who travel abroad interact with people who are not subjected to our media all the time. And then they, in turn, like, this is something that we both share. Like, we've both spent a lot of time outside of the United States and seen the United States through the lens of other people's eyes. And you can all of a sudden understand where, people are coming from, because they haven't been just bombarded with the essentially propaganda that we have here in the United States that gets us to believe that we're the good guys when we initiate all these, overseas conflicts in places like Libya or Syria, or, the list goes on and on and on and on, that, we don't look nearly so rosy and positive to most of the rest of the world when we do those kinds of things. And I think in the majority of cases, they're more right than we are in their assessment of who the bad guy is in
For
those
sure.
specific instances.
There's a guy called Peter Santinello. Are you familiar with him on YouTube? So he has a channel under Peter Santinello, and he started doing a lot of vlogs.
Oh, yeah, no, I do know who you're talking about now, yeah. He's the one that went around in Washington, right?
DC, exactly,
Yep.
yeah. And he has, so he's lived abroad for a really long time. He lived in Ukraine for a few years, and then he moved to the States in 2020, 2021, maybe right after the pandemic. And he's lived in like 100 some odd countries. I mean, he's lived in 100, he's been to 100 some odd countries. He's lived in a bunch of them. He's talked to a lot of people. And when he came back in 2021, he did a video of like the greatest things about America as somebody who's come back with a brand new perspective, and the worst things about America, right? And now he's doing that for the last few years. He's like literally going around the United States from state to state, city to city, and like, just downtrodden areas in DC. Like, just his recent series covering the United States is some of the best journalism I've ever seen. Period. It's so, and I highly recommend everybody goes check him out. I'll have a link to his podcast or to his channel in the description below. And I'm trying to get him on the channel. I would love to talk to Peter. I would love to. And so, okay. So what's the thing that he found? It's like, okay, coming back to the United States, there's a lot of pros. Freedom of speech. It's a good one. That's not very common. You can criticize your government without fear of being persecuted. At least it seems like that's the case. Seems to be getting a little bit better again, thanks to Elon's purchase of X. So thank you, Elon, very much. Uncle Elon. Every time he does, like, I was like joking to myself yesterday. Sorry, little aside. Anytime Elon says like a foot and mouth thing, I wanted to create like a Uncle Elon Hall of Fame, because in my head it's like, here goes Uncle Elon again saying some crazy shit. Anyways, anybody wants to start that, that's a free idea. Go for it. I think it will do really well. But so freedom of speech is great. He talked about how the infrastructure just works. You just get water, you get heat, the roads are there, traffic lights work. You can go to shops, your car, there's gas stations, places. Like, these are things that we take for granted big time. But one of his biggest criticisms of the United States after he came back, he said the media, the mainstream media of this country, is one of the biggest jokes he's ever seen. I'm paraphrasing kind of what he's saying. And essentially what he says, like, looking back in the future, we're going to look at mainstream media and judge it very, very, very poorly. That it's done a huge disservice to this country. And I think My hope, my true hope in the next couple years is that there's going to be a mass exodus from mainstream media and continuing in legacy media, call it, because of their inability to cover what is actually happening that's important. You know, like and platforms like X, places like YouTube that have their Overton window has opened more than I noticed before, which is great. I really commend YouTube for doing that. As more and more people discover these channels of conversation and information that are trying their hardest to figure out what's happening, and we're not going to get it right. Like most of these people, most of us, we don't even know what is happening. We're just trying to logically walk through what we're perceiving based on our life experiences and analyzing it from our lens, right? But if you have a lot of people doing that, that's going to maximize the chance of actually getting to the truth versus having a singular entity or three singular entities that are hugely incentivized by the wrong incentive, which is to just drive garbage to your audience so that they stay watching
division
your
and
stuff.
Misinformation. Yeah, I mean that's the thing about, you know, everyone who is all up in arms about misinformation and disinformation these days. I was like, you know, if we really want to have a serious conversation about those topics, I'm actually up for that conversation as long as we include all of the canonical, you know, state accepted sources of misinformation and disinformation in that conversation. Because I think the misinformation and disinformation that originates from normal everyday citizens, or even to people like Donald Trump says a lot of things that are just factually inaccurate, sometimes outright lies pretty regularly. But, you know, we kind of expect that from our politicians already. So it's weird that, you know, politicians are calling out other politicians for how much they lie. It's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. But the lies that he tells, I think, you know, are orders of magnitude less consequential. Like a lot of times they're almost jokes for the most part. And they're much less destructive than the lie that we are a good country when we go to Iraq and wreck their country and cause millions of people to suffer and die and just like degrade the overall quality of living in that state. Then we can't put it back together after we leave. And what do we leave them with? Oh, like who's worse than Saddam Hussein? ISIS. And you know what makes ISIS even more terrifying than, you know, just being crazy? Let's give them all of this military equipment that we brought over here, and we're just going to like abandon it, and they're just going to take it. And now we've given the worst people in the world like a lot of military strength and might to now go terrorize this entire region of the world. Like, I think that the lies that got us into Iraq are far more damaging and destructive than anything that Trump has said in the last 8 years. And this is coming from someone who's not planning to vote for Trump. And so like, we need to be able to have an honest conversation about that if we want to talk about dangerous misinformation and dangerous disinformation. Like, that is the definition of dangerous. It resulted in mass human suffering, and we are the ones responsible. And then the other thing I'll say is, you know, like, I still love this country. It's still where I want to live. It's still the greatest place in the world. And even though we've done a lot of messed up things, I will agree with Bill Maher that we're still the greatest country on earth that has ever been. Hopefully we can continue, you know, we can pull out of this nosedive that we're in right now and head back to brighter days in the future with, you know, more freedom and more fairness and more JFK style. Like, we want to project positive economic power by being the source of, you know, material abundance around the world rather than the source of bombs and M16s and conflicts. So, but you know, the fact that we can have this conversation, we can say these things publicly to
amazing.
a large audience and not have the FBI come raid us straight away. Like every now and then something crazy like that does happen, but it's
Straight away.
the exception, not the rule. Like if we were saying something like this as citizens in China, like we all know exactly what would happen to us and how long it would take, and it would be awful. And like all of those things that are highly complex and uncomfortable are all true at the same time. And the thing that I love about our founding documents is that we do have those lofty ideals. And that's why American citizens a lot of times are the harshest on America, is because we want to put pressure on this country to live up to the founding ideals of our forefathers, who they were not able to fully embody the expression of all of those ideals either. But they put them out there as a goal that we should be striving towards, and that over the generations we've more or less lived them out more fully over time, and we want to continue that trend and not allow this country to slide back into becoming a net negative for the world instead of a net positive. Because like I said, even though we've done a lot of crazy things, we have provided a lot of security to the world. Like as the world's police force, we're not always great. We got blood on our hands, but a lot of people have enjoyed a lot of peace. Like if you look at the overall statistics of, global human flourishing and peace and prosperity, things have been on the rise for decades now. So, it's both and at the same time.
100%. Couldn't agree more. And so the conclusion I've come to is like, it's in America's best interest for citizens to constantly criticize the things it's doing wrong, that they think it's doing wrong, right? And you can't do that if you are trying to control misinformation or disinformation, because the path to a solution will always involve misinformation or disinformation. It's called thinking out loud. And so you can very quickly see that if we start cracking down on this, like our former presidential candidate of the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, said, where she wants some form of punishment for misinformation or disinformation, you are automatically disincentivizing the citizens of this country to try to make this country better by default. And you are giving the power to propagandists to control the information flow of this country. It is crazy. It is unbelievable. And the more I think about this whole free speech thing, and we've been following this arc of Elon Musk with X for so long now. It feels like a lifetime. But the longer it passes, the more I'm like, damn, was that freaking that was so nuts. Like it's really highlighted. Like we were in a really bad spot. We were in a really bad spot. And we didn't even, I was completely oblivious to it until we started seeing some of the things. Listen, and is X a perfect place to find the truth? Hell no. Oh my God. It is a disaster zone. But that's the point. You need to have a disaster zone. You need a place of chaos and craziness. If I think my time back at Tesla, like what were the best environments to problem solve to come to an optimal solution? It was like the places where you were just throwing shit at the wall. You're just trying everything out of desperation because everything's about to collapse, right? But we found the solution. We found the solution through experimentation and just thinking about the craziest shit to implement. It's the same exact thing when you're trying to build a better country. You have to talk about crazy stuff. And if you're not allowing the public, if you're not trusting the citizens of a country that pay for the bills of the people that are trying to control it, if you don't trust your bosses to act in the best interest of the country, you are a piece of shit. Right? That's it. That's my conclusion.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've definitely redefined our country is supposed to be a country of the people, by the people, for the people. But a lot of times when people are talking about defending democracy, they're not talking about of the people, by the people, for the people. They're talking about defending the existing institutions of the two-party system and all of the regulatory apparatus and the administrative state that has grown up in Washington. They want the status quo. So when they're saying, when you hear any number of like a Dick Cheney talk about defending democracy as an establishment Republican, what he's talking about is defending the old guard ways of how this country has been run really for decades and decades now. And, that is, they're going to say, it's positive change, but it's really the same old that has put us into the position that we're in right now, which, I don't think is a necessarily positive one. And that's where, this tension really comes from. And yeah, I guess it does go right back to the John Mearsheimer point about it's really a uniparty. And that is something that is frustrating for the American people, is that they feel so unrepresented by the government that takes and takes and takes a lot from them, and seems to misappropriate those funds for very unfortunate use cases.
And then Trump is selling himself as the hammer to that thing. That's how he got into office in 2016. He wasn't able to do much of anything. It actually made it worse in a way, I would argue, with 2020. I mean, the pandemic came through as well, so that put a lot of strain.
It seemed like mixed results from my perspective on things that worked. Like there was definitely some deregulation that worked, but we didn't get into any new wars, but that didn't prevent us from continuing in a number of conflicts that already existed.
Yeah. Abraham Accords, North Korea, South Korea, that was some good stuff for sure.
Yeah. A lot of people who would defend him would say that, well, he just didn't know who to trust back then, and now he knows, and that's why now he's looking at having Elon and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. and Vivek Ramaswamy and all these people who really are much more in line with wanting to cut back the overall size. They're government reductionists, not expansionists. Maybe he would be better on those fronts moving forward. It's hard to say. I mean, this establishment is very, very powerful, and that, I think that the stakes are much higher for them now. I think last time a lot of people were surprised, including Trump, but I think even, a lot of the establishment political types in Washington were surprised that he won. And they quickly got to work on a way to try to prevent him from being overly effective in his ambitions to drain the swamp. So I think they do feel a lot more existential dread at the thought of him winning again and being more prepared to come after them. And I think that does make the stakes a lot higher for them and for him in all of this. And I tend to agree with Eric Weinstein that they probably are not going to allow him to win. And, he's like, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. Obviously, we've already had 2 failed attempts at assassination. That's very suspicious and uncomfortable and strange. And just like, it's hard to know exactly what it is that we're witnessing, but the likelihood that he's allowed to serve again, I think, is low, unless there just happens to be some other unseen force that, like the Riders of Rohan kind of a thing that can come in and save the day at the last second. That's what it seems like it would take for him to win. And then would the country overall win in that scenario? I don't know. It seems like a crazy scenario.
Why not just disappear into the shadows? Isn't that like one of the most benign scenarios?
The deep state people or Trump?
Deep state.
Oh,
Just listen, you lost. And I'm not saying like this is like as a way to say like, hey, Trump should win. I don't know what I want. That's part of my issue. Is that it's my biggest struggle is like why is Trump the face of this? I'm like, God damn it, can it be somebody else? But I understand his appeal. And the benign scenario could be it's just like, listen, yeah, you tried. Let's just say there's a connection, right? Either through, although I mean this, whatever. Put it aside. I don't even want to talk about like the link, but like let's say there is a movement to try and stop him because he will single-handedly be responsible for those people to lose their jobs and lose their ability to influence, their ability to exercise their power, their ability to make a bunch of money, their ability to live the lives that they want to live, to play the game that they want to play, right? Like, is it that unrealistic to think like, hey, listen, maybe you just gotta take the L. Just take the L and then just move on. Like, you played the game, you won for a long time, nothing's forever, take the L, GG's, let somebody else play. Let us play our game of trying to reduce corruption as much as possible. Like, why, is that too naive, Hans? Like, is it that too naive?
I think a lot of people are, very financially motivated to keep the current gravy trains rolling, and that financial interest, along with, like there's carrots and sticks here. They know that, if they can keep the Kabuki theater going, they get to keep looting the American taxpayer, so there's money to be made. They also know that if accountability is really brought to bear, they might go to jail or potentially worse. And so
presidential pardon, just move on. Listen, you played the game.
Well, hey, yeah, maybe if we could do something like that, then it would take the sting out of a lot of this. But yeah, I mean, what you're proposing sounds almost like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, like South Africa had back when apartheid ended. And man, I mean, if we could accomplish something like that, shoot, I would love that.
Like, what I'm saying here is like the people that are part of this like machine that is, I'm going to say, unwillingly and accidentally trying to bankrupt the United States and put us in places that we shouldn't be in the first place. They don't know that they are doing this, that they're actually, this is bad. Like they're just so entrenched in the system, and human emotions have taken over and they can't think clearly. And it's not their fault that they're acting in this manner, because they are just part of a corrupt system. The system has corrupted these individuals, and their primal senses have been hacked by the enticing nature of being in that seat, which gives them almost unlimited power and unlimited money, right? You've just been hacked. The United States has hacked you in a way, like those systems, right? And so my proposal is, okay, your turn is over. I'm not going to throw you in jail. I'm just going to pretend I'm the president of the United States or whatever system that can do that. You're not going to jail. Listen, you fucked up a lot. We're going to go a different place, but we're not going to put you in jail. We're just going to say, hey, we'll let you live out the rest of your life however you want to live out the rest of your life, but we will not let you be part of government. That's it. You just can't be. You can't be in these seats because we cannot trust you. We cannot trust your judgment. So have fun. Go spend your hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars, however you want. Be part of society. Travel if you want. We don't really care. Go collude with another country if you really want to. Okay, we'll deal with you if that's the case. But just set aside, go away, and just let the grown-ups take over. Let the people that are actually really concerned about the United States and not themselves, let us take over. That's what I'm proposing.
Yeah, you'd have to also, you'd have to be able to do that and fix the broken incentives that, like you said, that there's a somewhat of a corrupt system that created those actions. If you just replace the people that are in those seats, that doesn't change. You still got the same corrupting force that's in operation, so you got to fix that too.
But the new people would fix that, right? So the new people that step in I agree.
The people that are currently in those positions got there because they said, hey, this is broken, let's fix it.
Yeah, but the people that are going in there, in theory, are going in there to fix the system. None of the previous ones are really trying to fix the system. They're trying to play within the system. They're not overtly talking about this system existing, right?
But when they first got into the system, was that true? Or is that what happened over time?
Okay, so then your argument is like, this is fucked.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the only way to fix that is by creating a new system outside of this system that people would want to use. But how do you do that without the government
or driving up competition? Yeah, so I don't know what the solution is to these problems, and that it is just scary to track current trends and to think about where this is headed in the future.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode of Farzad and Hans, or Hans and Farzad. Bye.
Hans and Farzad ruin everything. Why everything is messed up all the time and always will be.
But this is my optimist side coming out, right? This is good. This conversation's good. Getting this out there for people to listen to is good. This is how you fix shit. Part of it. It's a very small part of it, right? So it's like, okay, this is good. This is great.
One thing that I will say that I think is an optimistic force is that I think that the existing structures they think they have a Trump problem. They think that as long as they can make Trump go away, and he's pretty old, he's going to die in the next 10, 20 years, regardless, whatever happens. So that is not a permanent problem. But I think they underestimate just how much this pressure from the populace is going to continue to increase and mount against the existing systems and demand positive change. Will we get the positive change that we're demanding, or will we get change for the worse? I don't know. I hope it's change for the better. I do think that America is a pretty anti-fragile system, and that we've undergone a lot of shocks in the past from all sorts of things, and it always seems existential at the time. And so far, they've all worked out. Whether it's World War I, whether it's World War II, whether it's the Civil War. I mean, just over and over again, we've had these heart-wrenching, existential crises, and we have come out on the other side of them a stronger nation overall. So maybe that can happen again. I think we do definitely need to figure out how to enforce some of the checks and balances that we're supposed to have in place to deal with some of these issues. And it is, the other area that really encourages me is that for a long time, the smartest people in the world seemed like they were all focused on other types of problems. They were not focused on governmental problems. And I am seeing that trend also shift. That, Jeff Bezos is one of the most ridiculously effective entrepreneurs the world has ever seen. Amazon should not exist. And the fact that it does is friggin' amazing. It's a product and service that makes my life better every day. I do not begrudge that man a penny of his billions of dollars, because he has brought so much value to the world, to that thing. But the fact that Elon Musk makes him look like a chump is ridiculous. Elon has accomplished way more than Jeff Bezos has accomplished. And then when you step back and you think, okay, look at how much time is Elon thinking about these societal and governmental level problems, and then bringing in, whether you're listening to the All In podcast, and there's a large contingent of people who've been extremely successful in tech and in VC in Silicon Valley who are all thinking about these problems. Oh, and then it's a whole class of other people, like you've got the Palmer Luckies of the world starting Anduril, and it's becoming fashionable again to work in defense. You've got people like
Palantir.
Alex Karp at Palantir, and a lot of people, Joe Lonsdale, just on and on. Like, there's a number of people who I look at and I think, man, those are extremely effective operators. They're extremely intelligent. They know how to get things done, and more and more and more, they are looking at issues with the way that our country runs and operates and how to fix those things. And I think as this, pressure builds within the culture of just this frustration with how broken things are, we'll only see that also continue to grow and more people talking about this. And so if we can funnel all of that frustrated energy into constructive criticism instead of just cynical, destructive things, then I think we're going to be fine. But there's always a tension between those things, because like if it's really not working, there's a very strong temptation just to tear it all down. Like, whatever happens after this, it can't be worse than what we have right now. Yes, it can. Like, the world can be a hellacious place, and it can be way, 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 way worse than you possibly could think or imagine, even if you think that things are terrible today.
Like, so much worse. Right? Yeah. I think the point you made around there seems like 100x of really successful people that would have traditionally been observers or players of the system, let's say, are increasingly becoming more vocal and actioning as fixers of that system versus players of that system is such a brilliant point. And I think that is like the defining moment of our time is the level of engagement from the general public in the United States in politics, I think is unprecedented. Because if I think of America as a country and like somebody that's lived abroad, has been part of other countries, the allergic reaction that Americans have towards politics traditionally is like one of the most defining things about America that I could have thought of. Is like nobody wanted to talk politics ever. Like, nobody wanted to talk politics. Nobody wanted to discuss politics. That was my take. Like, that was my lived experience. I could be just a little echo chamber, a little portion, right? But the more I've been...
They were just too sensitive to talk about it with you because you have brown skin.
Okay, so then forget what I'm going to say. But honestly, like if I'm
only
thinking
kind
about
of trolling.
No, I know you're probably there's a lot of truth to it. It's just human nature. Who cares? But I think, and maybe it just could be me getting older. I just feel like it feels like like our generation coming up right now. We're both basically the same age. How old are you?
I think we're within like a month of each other. Yeah, I'm 37.
37, yeah. What month were you born again?
February.
Yeah, January. That's right. Yes, I'm older. Actually, that's not good. I'll die faster. Hopefully not. We'll see. Actually, I don't want you to die either. Anyway, stupid thing to bring up. But I think our generation, it feels like we're more engaged in politics than our previous generations were around this age. I think our age from like 50 years ago, they were really enjoying the fruits of America. Our age now is much more connected because of social media and the internet to what is happening. And we're spending a lot more time questioning what the fuck has happened. I think that is one of the core differences between now and say 40, 50 years ago. And that is putting a lot of pressure on the system. And, Trump is selling himself as a savior. But your other point of the thirst and hunger for the fix is only going to get more loud and more forceful the longer it goes unaddressed. And which is going to create a tipping point, right? To where if you let this thing go too far, you'll have a very terrible outcome. And so, we'll see.
I mean, this is exactly why they are becoming much, much, much less tolerant of free speech.
Yes.
Is because they don't want people to share these opinions of how frustrated they are with things. And there's no
other logical explanation. Like, why would you do that? Like, it's literally the First Amendment of the United States. Like, why would you do that? It's wild.
Well, didn't you hear the Constitution is, one of the defining documents of the United States, but it's also potentially the biggest threat to our democracy.
That's right. The thing that instituted democracy is the biggest threat for democracy. Yeah. 100%. New York Times, thank you so much for your continued amazing insight into how America is the worst thing of all time. And the things that are actually there to protect the people are actually there to harm the people. Anyway, okay, I say we end it there. I got to pee really bad. Really, really bad. What do you think? You want to keep going?
Yeah. So, no, I think go ahead and go pee. Then we need to regroup just for recording a banger,
intro.
30-second, 1 minute intro.
Oh, yeah, I'll be back.
We need Jeopardy music. Do 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 do. Farzad's in the bathroom.
That was some pretty good. You kept your pitch relatively constant. That was well done. Not bad, dude. I look so orange.
You'll have to either color grade it or just embrace like mine is bad. I'm gonna have to redo my lighting too and decide if I want to stick with. I do kind of like the not purple, but the reason I ended up going with the purple is because this gray paint that we have in here just makes almost any other color besides purple look funky. I wish that we had painted white in here instead of gray.
I think my issue is that the background's too cool.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely makes a huge difference to the way that your skin looks.
For sure.
I was gonna go pull up that thing that David linked us to today from Patty. So clearly state the video contents and set expectations for what the viewer is going to get, and then follow that up with something intriguing or curiosity inducing.
Okay. So there was a portion of the podcast towards the second half where we really started getting passionate. Mm-hmm. Part of me wanted to just take clips of that and throw it at the beginning. But do you think we should craft an actual intro?
We could, we could do either. Maybe we should try and record one and then edit and do whatever feels best.
Yeah.
You could even put the intro on there and then we could try it, upload it, cut it out at first. And then if you decide it's not doing well, then you can add it back in.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. So let's record an intro, and then I really want to edit this one because I'm going to use this to learn DaVinci. So we discussed foreign policy, we discussed freedom of speech, we discussed deep state, we discussed
All in
podcast. Okay. Okay, so Hans and I are going to discuss the role of the United States. Terrible introduction. Not good. What do we say?
Is the United States the world's biggest good guy or the world's biggest bad guy? Something along those lines.
Yeah.
The United States, global superpower or global supervillain? Farzad and I get into it.
Who? That's good too. I always wonder if I should move up the free speech topic first.
I definitely feel like the second half of the conversation was way more engaging. Like we were kind of on a slow start to begin with.
Yeah.
Which I kind of expected since we didn't really know what we were going to talk about. Like that's usually how that works.
There is a feeling that freedom of speech has been under attack for the better part of a few years. And Hans and I are just dying to talk about this topic. And there's so much we want to say. There's so much we want to say. This is so hard.
This election cycle is one of the craziest in American history, and it's driven largely by an increasing amount of frustration by normal, everyday people. And that's why you have such an insane character like a Donald Trump doing so well in the election this year. Once again, after he's already had 4 years in the White House, where does all of this tension and frustration come from? Why are people so upset? Farzad and I are going to dig into a number of different forces, both domestically and internationally, that dig into how we get to the point in American culture where we are at today and how that affects the outlook for the future.
And why are powers so hell-bent on preventing these discussions from happening? Why is that? Why are we having such a hard time discussing these things? They're difficult topics, they're controversial, they're divisive, but that's why we should talk about them, because there's obviously problems there that we have to sift through, right? So then why? Yeah, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Fuck it.
Do you know the Hans and Franz meme?
No.
I'll send you something later.
Okay. All right. I think that was pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah. Hopefully you can, between all of the random things that we just said,
I'll clean it
create
up.
something.
Yeah.
That'll work. And you can always record something and post if you have to.